Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and there's a lot to talk about today. Honestly, I should have probably cut this up into 3 different videos, but I want to go ahead and talk about all of this right now. This video may end up being 30 minutes long. We'll see. I mean, y'all already know how long it is while y'all are watching this video, but I'm just now beginning the recording. There's so many things to talk about, man. Rivera and Mayhew had press conferences. This picture is from a completely different day, a completely different year. So they weren't together like this. Rivera had one day, Mayhew had one the next day. And they both spoke about a lot of things, most notably quarterback and re-signing key players, especially Terry McLaurin. Then there's also been a lot of reports revolving around the quarterback position in the Washington Commanders, as far as like who we may trade for, who we're really interested in, all of that type of stuff. We got to talk about Montez Sweat's 5th-year option more than likely getting picked up by the Washington Commanders. We got to talk about Washington being one of the finalists to host the 2024 draft. We got to talk about the new stadium details. I'm really excited about that. Not necessarily where it's going to be, but when they actually pick where it's going to be, what the stadium is going to be like. Roof or no roof, retractable or non-retractable, fixed roof, retractable, whichever one. And then there's also some more random news on top of all of that. So yeah, man, this is a really in-depth video. Go ahead and get comfortable. About to dive into all of that, but before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Also be on the lookout for all of the content that's coming out. I mean, any major updates, even the little updates, y'all know I'm gonna give it to y'all. And I'm still working on my quarterback series. I'm working on my next mock draft, all of that type of stuff. So be on the lookout for all kinds of content. Make sure you subscribe. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so first of all, the first main thing we have to talk about in this video are Rivera and Mayhew's press conference quotes, and they're very informative. I was even surprised by how in-depth they went with certain things. Starting with Rivera. First of all, Rivera on whether the big-time quarterbacks may end up getting traded. He said, quote, "That's what we're trying to find out," unquote. And that says to me that they're definitely looking into trying to get a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, or any of those top guys, Deshaun Watson. There's clear interest there. Does that necessarily mean that something's going to come from it? Who knows? Actually, quite likely not, which we're going to discuss later into the video when we get to like the more report-heavy quarterback updates that aren't directly coming from Rivera and Mayhew, when we're looking at sources from reporters and things like that. But from the point of view of Rivera and Mayhew, they're definitely trying to get one of those top guys. And I believe him. Rivera also said, as far as finding a franchise quarterback, he said, quote, "This year we're being very proactive, trying to truly cover every base. It's a long process and you're still not guaranteed anything. Every time we hear something, we're checking into it," unquote. So I'm pretty sure even with the Kyler Murray unrest, I'm pretty sure they probably called the Cardinals like, "Hey, your boy looks a little unruly over there. You know, you might want to trade him to us." You know what I'm saying? So I think they are actually being very diligent and really looking into every possibility. And I like the fact that Rivera even spoke about how he was lucky to have Cam Newton early on in his coaching years in Carolina. He said, quote, "I was very fortunate in Carolina to find our franchise quarterback right away. Not having that guy has made things more difficult," unquote. And he even talked about how Washington is literally looking everywhere after losing out on Stafford last year. Like, losing out on Stafford was a monumental moment in Washington history. Who knows what would have happened? I mean, the Rams more than likely don't win the Super Bowl. And I mean, if you compare our roster to the Rams, excluding quarterbacks, are we good enough to where Matthew Stafford takes us to the Super Bowl and win? Not sure. Not very likely. We don't have an Aaron Donald, don't have a Jalen Ramsey, and with the injuries we had last year, we definitely didn't have a Von Miller, even with as old as Von Miller is. But it's still interesting to know that, you know, that missing out on Matthew Stafford is going to make them more aggressive this season. And then even expounding upon the Matthew Stafford situation, JP Finlay asked Ron Rivera about what's too much to give up for a quarterback. And Rivera said simply, quote, "Does anybody care what the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford last year? No," unquote. So basically, it doesn't matter what you have to give up to get the guy. Once you get the guy, All of that other stuff does not matter. Of course, you would wish to have those first round picks or players, whatever you may end up giving up back. But at the end of the day, when you get that guy, it really doesn't matter. The Rams literally do not care about what they gave up to get Matthew Stafford. They don't at all. They got a Super Bowl. They are very happy. They regret absolutely nothing. And if RG3 never got hurt, we wouldn't be complaining about trading first round picks for quarterbacks like that. If we would have hit on that and RG3 were still like our franchise quarterback somehow, no injuries, he learned how to pass better, you wouldn't complain about that. But of course, a lot of the bad things went wrong. So that's why we care right now. But if you hit on that guy, you don't care. The Bengals do not care about all the losing they did the previous years to end up with Joe Burrow, even though they didn't like purposely tank. But going to the Super Bowl and having the magical year that they just had made up for all of the losing they've done previously. Again, even more specifically, as far as what the Chiefs gave up to trade up for Mahomes, all of that type of stuff, they do not care. None of the fans even look back like, man, I wish we didn't do all of that to get Pat Mahomes. I wish we didn't give up all of that to get Matthew Stafford and win this ring. Nobody cares. And then moving on from quarterback, as far as things Rivera spoke about, when addressing the media, he said interviews have already started with players. And with in-person interviews, Rivera and his scouts are able to study how prospects react to questions more fully. So this team is really big on character. As we know from the past couple of years since Rivera's been here, character and athleticism have been preached over and over again. So the fact that they can interview in person again is huge for this organization, even bigger than most organizations that don't prioritize character as much as we do. With this militaristic background that Rivera has and the way he's trying to create a culture, Rivera even said that reading body language is key, and that is what they missed last year. And who knows, maybe we don't end up drafting Jamin Davis if we're able to meet with him in person before the draft. Even though, I mean, he has great character, so we probably would have ended up drafting him anyway, but who knows what would have happened. Everything would have been completely different. The whole draft would have been probably flipped upside down if everybody were able to meet with guys. So the pandemic definitely affected a lot of things there, and so they're really happy to be back to normal, at least in that fashion where they can meet with guys in person. Vera even said that during the interview process with quarterbacks, they actually watch film with the quarterback. First of all, they want to pick their brain, and of course that's going to weigh a lot on which quarterback they may end up wanting, since this quarterback class is perceived to be weak and there's no just clear-cut number one guy. These interview processes and them sitting down and watching film with these quarterbacks is definitely going to start separating some guys throughout this class. It's going to take guys off their board. It's going to push guys up their board. There's going to be big gaps in between the quarterbacks that they want based on this interview process. I mean, the film is already done. There's nothing more they can do about film. So at this point, guys like Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, and all of those guys, interviewing is the biggest way to raise their draft stock right now. And I've been hearing that Malik Willis has been killing the interviews. They love him. Several teams and GMs are raving about Malik Willis's interviews, but we're not on to that right now. We're going back to Rivera. They even said that they watch the game tape with the quarterbacks during the interviews to see their reactions and test their recall. Like, they will purposely show them some good plays and they'll show them some bad plays to see how they'll respond to those bad plays in that part of the evaluation. Like, do they try to avoid it, or do they actually pinpoint and show what they learned from the play and things like that? So I think that's really interesting. I like that strategy from the team. And then before we move on to Mayhew, Rivera also said some very interesting things. He said no decision yet on Montez Sweat's fifth-year option, but he did say that Montez Sweat was an important piece to the defense and they do want him back. Rivera said that it's early in the process, but Sweat is a big part of the Commanders' plan moving forward. And then Rivera also spoke about the linebacker spot. He said, quote, "You have to have guys that can hit and cover, play with speed," unquote. And this 2022 class has quite a bit of both, so expect us to take a linebacker definitely at some point in this draft. Definitely wouldn't say the first round, especially if we haven't found our franchise quarterback before the draft. I'm almost sure we're going to end up going quarterback in the first round, because they're not entering this 2022 season empty-handed. I just don't see it. But definitely expect us to take linebacker probably like second or third round. I could definitely see that playing out. And then moving on to Martin Mayhew, he was asked about how quarterback uncertainty affects the free agency, especially as far as re-signing our own guys like JD McKissick and Cam Sims and Bobby McCain and even holding on to Landon Collins and extending Terry McLaurin. And he said, quote, "We want to get a sense for where they are contractually. We want to explain to them that we aren't ready to make an offer right now, but we do want them back, and they have the opportunity to go out when the negotiation period begins in a week or so. They will have the opportunity to go out and talk to other teams, but we want them to keep us in mind with where they're at contractually and what kind of offers they're looking at," unquote. And basically throughout all of that quote, the most important part is the fact that even though he didn't directly say it, but the quarterback position is holding up everything else. Terry McLaurin's extension, re-signing guys like DeAndre Carter and JD McKissic, Cam Sims, Bobby McCain, all of that type of stuff. The reason they're really trying to restructure Landon Collins, because who knows what quarterback they may end up with. If they go and get Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, one of these guys, they have to pay like 20, 30, 40 million dollars a year. That's going to affect how much money they can even offer these other guys, most notably Terry McLaurin with this big time extension that we're expecting, with him potentially getting paid like the top 10 receiver that he is. If we end up going to get like a Malik Willis in the draft, or whoever your favorite quarterback is in the draft, you save so much more money that you can spend towards, or at least if that's the plan, because remember the draft is after free agency. By the time we get to the draft, we'll either have JD McKissic, DeAndre Carter, and all of these guys or not. And more than likely by then, Terry McLaurin will either be signed or not. If he isn't re-signed before the draft, we probably won't re-sign him until next year anyway. But if the plan is to go and get a top quarterback in the draft, then you have more money to give those guys. So that's why we're not able to offer Terry McLaurin that extension and all of these other guys these contracts to re-sign them back to the team, because we don't know if we're going to end up having to use a lot of that money to get a quarterback. Once we figure out the quarterback position, everything else will fall into place. And I like the fact that Martin Mayhew even went on to admit that, because that's very true. I mean, we are 9th in cap space, but it's not like we have infinite money. We only have $30 million worth of free cap space right now. So if you trade for like a Russell Wilson, who after the Seahawks would eat a lot of dead cap from trading them, which is even more of a reason why they will not end up trading them away, actually, even with all of the rumors going around, he will still cost like at least $25 million a year of that $30 million. So now what money do you have left to extend Terry McLaurin and pay him big money? And then even beyond that, how are you going to pay JD McKissic and all of those other guys I keep naming, like DeAndre Carter and those guys? So we'll see, man. The quarterback position is holding up a lot of things, but I like the fact that it is holding up everything, because that goes to show that they are truly trying. If they already decided that they're not going to go get a Deshaun Watson, or Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, or any of those top guys, if they already made up their mind that they're just going to go and get a lesser guy like a Mitchell Trubisky or a Jameis Winston, or potentially pair one of those guys with a draft quarterback, or only focus on getting a draft quarterback, then we probably would have re-signed Terry McLaurin by now. So the fact that we haven't shows that they are really looking into every possibility at the quarterback position. So that does make me happy, but at the same time, I want us to go ahead and figure that out so we can go ahead and get Terry McLaurin signed long term. And Nikki Javala reported that Washington is scheduled to meet with Terry McLaurin's agent on Friday, because you know, with the combine, this is when everybody meets with everybody. Agents, GMs, head coaches, offensive coordinators, everybody's in Indianapolis right now meeting with each other. And then of course all of the draft prospects are there as well. So this is a really interesting time. And then it's really interesting because Terry McLaurin's agent is also the same agent that represents DeAndre Carter. So they're also going to talk about DeAndre Carter when they talk to Terry McLaurin's agent, because they're both the same agent. They're the same guy. So Friday, expect to hear at least some interesting news about Terry McLaurin and DeAndre Carter. I don't know about those other guys like restructuring Landon Collins or bringing back JD McKissic or Bobby McCain or any of those other notable names. But by Friday, we should at least get some type of rumor or report as far as Terry McLaurin and DeAndre Carter goes. But Martin Mayhew also said that he's already met with Cam Sims' agent yesterday, and that he plans to meet with the agents of JD McKissic and Bobby McCain at the combine sometime this week. But like from that quote that I read, Mayhew did say that the Commanders plan to let McKissic, McCain, and Cam Sims speak to other teams during the legal tampering window. So we may end up not getting those three guys back. who knows, maybe all three guys get a better offer somewhere else and they just leave before we're ready to offer them. Maybe we'll be too late. Martin Mayhew was also asked if he expects Landon Collins to be back on the current contract that he's on. He said, quote, "Time will tell," unquote, and that they will meet with Landon Collins' agent while in Indianapolis, of course. But I mean, that's just really interesting because it definitely sounds like from multiple reports and even the way Martin Mayhew answered that question that they're really trying to get Landon Collins to restructure his contract and to take a pay cut. Because with the money that you're making right now, we just can't afford it. We're trying to get a franchise quarterback and you're blocking that. We're trying to extend Terry. We're trying to get Daron Payne and Montez Sweat long term, and you're eating up all of this cap space. And granted, Landon Collins looked very good for us at a hybrid linebacker spot, but definitely not at the money that he's making. He's still overpaid, even with as good as he looked last year. Martin Mayhew also said that his personal staff is focusing on, quote, adding guys who can cover, unquote, at the linebacker spot. He said that the, quote, two down guys, unquote, of the 90s are disappearing, and selecting premier athletes will remain a priority. So with Rivera and Martin Mayhew talking about linebacker, again, don't be surprised if we go big on linebacker in free agency, and especially in the draft within the first 3 rounds somewhere. And that's crazy because we just drafted Jamin Davis 19th overall in the first round last year, and they're still emphasizing how much they need to improve at linebacker. That's sad. That's really sad. But I'm glad that they're not the type of team that's gonna have an ego about it. We drafted Jamin Davis last year, so we're just gonna force it, and we're not gonna even try to address the position because we don't want to look stupid. I'm glad that they're like, man, hey, it looks like we made a mistake, bro. We still need to address this linebacker position. I'm happy about that. But I don't think we should do it in the first round. I think quarterback is a priority. I mean, if we already have like Deshaun Watson on our roster and all the case stuff is situated and he won't be suspended, or even if he is suspended temporarily, if all of that's figured out and we already have our franchise quarterback before the draft, even though we wouldn't have a first round pick to use, but if for some odd reason we did, maybe you can go linebacker then. But again, if you get a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson before the draft, you don't have a first round pick to spend on linebacker anyway. And if we don't have one of those guys, you need to go quarterback in the first round. So I just don't see like a Nakobe Dean come here. I love him. That's my Georgia dog. Wherever he goes, I'm a root for him, but I don't see him playing in the burgundy and gold at all. And then Martin Mayhew even expounded upon the fact that athleticism is really important for defenses now because offenses are spreading things out. The Commanders have some of those players now, but they want to add more. Again, like I said way earlier in the video, character and athleticism are like their primary requirements when they enter the draft process. Mayhew also said that they feel good about their receivers. They expect big things from De'Ami Brown, Curtis Samuel, and Dax Mills, and just the wide receiver group overall. Of course, Terry McLaurin's included in that, but that goes to show that they're not going to prioritize receiver throughout this offseason. That sounds like when in doubt, they're cool with what they have. They would like to upgrade maybe, but like they're not going to prioritize like an Allen Robinson or Devontae Adams in free agency, and they're definitely not going to draft a guy in the first round, maybe not even in the second round, with how optimistic he sounded about the wide receiver position. So if we do end up touching receiver in the draft, don't expect it to be anything earlier than the 3rd round. And I'm emphasizing stuff like that to y'all and reporting that stuff because y'all know me, man. I like to come out with a draft guide on previous quotes that we've said and how we may draft. So by the time we get to the draft, you already know in your mind, like, okay, we're more than likely not going receiver or linebacker within these first couple of rounds for a reason. Whether you believe they should or not, I want to give y'all what their draft strategy is so there's no surprises when we get to the draft. I'm trying to put y'all into the minds of Rivera, Mayhew, and his Washington organization. Of course, we're going to review all of this when we get closer to the draft. I'm going to bring up all of these type of quotes later on, and I'm going to actually do an entire draft guide video so you can have a great feel of where they're looking when we get to the draft. And of course, that will be after free agency's already happened, so we'll know exactly what holes we still have left and where we really need to improve at, specifically more than likely quarterback. And then lastly, it was really interesting that Martin Mayhew basically said that it wasn't a fair fight for the Stafford trade last year when the Rams swooped in, which is, I mean, fairly interesting. He has a decent point because Martin Mayhew is fairly connected himself, but the current Lions GM literally was the director of college scouting for the Rams from 2013 to 2020. So that did help them get that trade done. So hey, Martin Mayhew, get your connections up. You in the combine where everybody's at. Shake some hands, man. Now let's talk about all of these quarterback updates from reports from different sources. Maybe some are rumors, maybe some are facts from trustworthy sources. We're just going to discuss all of them and make sure you take everything I say with a grain of salt. Let's get it. So it's been reported that the Washington Commanders, Indianapolis Colts, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New Orleans Saints, Carolina Panthers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are all pursuing quarterback trades. So that's basically our market right there. That's who we're competing against. Maybe there's some more names in the mix that are less aggressive than us, but those teams that I just listed are probably the ones that are the most aggressive, and that's who we're directly competing against and bidding against when we're trying to make these trade offers. Like if we make a trade offer, then the Colts come with one, then the Bucks come with one, and now we got to come with another one to top those two. It's like that type of environment right now for quarterback trades, which I predicted. I've been saying for years now, at the beginning of every season, it always looks like, oh, all of these teams got their quarterback situations figured out. By the time we get to the offseason, we'll probably be the only team that needs a quarterback, and it should be really easy to get one. But stuff always happens, and we always end up competing. At least we have a higher draft pick this time, but man, it's never easy. All kinds of things happen. Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe the Saints re-sign Jameis Winston. Maybe the Panthers end up signing a lower guy like a Teddy Bridgewater. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. But I know the Colts are not getting Carson Wentz back, and Tom Brady retired. So, and the Steelers, who boy. So I already know at least those three teams are about to be just as aggressive as we are, if not more aggressive. We'll see. It's also really notable that somebody pointed out that, I mean, like I spoke about earlier, a lot of GMs, agents, coaches are face to face in the combine right now, shaking hands. So don't be surprised if a trade does end up happening at some point this offseason. I mean, during this week specifically with the combine. Even though the combine is specifically for the draft, almost everybody important is there. Any of the guys that would be involved in deals are there. So don't be surprised if somebody ends up getting traded this week, like Russell Wilson or somebody. Still not very likely, but this is one of the main weeks that it would happen this offseason. And like I said earlier, Rivera said that they were interested in looking for any quarterback possible, but it's also being reported from The Athletic's Jeff Howe that the Washington Commanders, quote, have already inquired about every quarterback who might be available, unquote. And again, this early digging is a sign that they plan to be very aggressive in an attempt to upgrade the quarterback position. And John Keim even backed this up as well and reported it himself. He said Washington has reached out to every team to inquire about a quarterback's availability and the cost. And apparently they have a list of 42 quarterbacks that they're looking into. And that's crazy. I mean, 42 quarterbacks. That's really interesting. That's literally everybody. That's even further than I would have gone. So that's really encouraging now that they're looking into every situation possible, even the cheaper guys, just to compare value. Like, would you prefer to give up 3 firsts for Russell Wilson, or would you prefer to sign Jameis Winston without having to give up any players or picks and to sign them to like an $8 million deal or something? I'm glad that they're weighing their options. Of course, I prefer one of the top guys. It'd be really nice, but I'm glad that they're looking at everything. But the most important thing is definitely that they're at least trying to get one of those top guys, because I don't feel like any of these previous off seasons they even tried to get one of the elite quarterbacks. This year they are. But again, who knows if it's going to happen. And then there was even a report yesterday that came out that rumors around the NFL say that Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson will be pursued by the Commanders. So there's reports and sources coming from all over the place saying a lot of the same things. Again, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. I know I keep saying that, but I want to keep reiterating that. Because at the end of the day, I mean, they can be as aggressive as they want. But not only does it take us to offer, but it takes the other team to accept. So it doesn't matter what we offer. Imagine if we offer 3 firsts and some players for Russell Wilson. If the Seahawks really just don't want to trade away Russell Wilson, you can't really be mad at Rivera and Martin Mayhew for that. They offered a lot. They probably offered too much for him, and it just takes another team to accept it. I mean, granted, like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, why would they want to trade those quarterbacks to another NFC team? I feel like Matthew Stafford, they could have done more to get him, but I feel like this time around, even if they offer crazy value in return for one of these quarterbacks, if they don't end up getting one, I don't necessarily think it's going to be because of their lack of ability to acquire a quarterback. I think it's just going to be really hard to get them because the Seahawks don't want to trade Russell Wilson. The Green Bay Packers don't want to trade Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the Packers GM just came out and said that they haven't received a single trade offer for Aaron Rodgers yet. There was a report that teams had offers ready, but they actually haven't called them and officially offered anything yet. And then even like Kyler Murray, it appears he does want to remain in Arizona even with all of this chaos that's going on. He just really wants a contract extension. I mean, as of right now, it looks like Aaron Rodgers should end up back in Green Bay, even with that weird Instagram post he had. The Seahawks reportedly have no interest in trading Russell Wilson, and he hasn't even demanded a trade yet. He just keeps emphasizing that he's unhappy, and that may just honestly be leverage for him to force the Seahawks to really build around him and prioritize getting them a better O-line and things like that. And then again, the Kyler Murray situation looks like it may ultimately just end up being nothing, just something we talked about for a couple of weeks. He may end up getting that extension and being perfectly happy and not wanting to leave Arizona at all. And then, I mean, of course, we got to talk about Jimmy G. First of all, I didn't want Jimmy G in the first place, but the Jimmy G situation is crazy because @Schultz report said that the Steelers and the Commanders are both highly intrigued by Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know how much I believe that. I really hope that's false. Out of everything I've said today, I hope that's the one thing that's false. I mean, because first of all, I don't like Jimmy G even when fully healthy, but my biggest thing with Jimmy G is that he's injury prone. We've played the 49ers more than once since Jimmy G has been traded to the 49ers, and we have yet to play against Jimmy G. I don't think people realize how injury prone he actually is. It was even recently reported today, as in March 2nd, it just came out that Jimmy G is gonna have to get shoulder surgery. He suffered a shoulder injury in the playoff win over Dallas. So on top of how I feel like he just got carried by the 49ers, he's been getting carried by the 49ers a lot. You trade Matthew Stafford for Jimmy G, and the 49ers beat the Rams in the playoffs by 20 easily. And even my Rams fan friend admitted that. Like, it's completely obvious that Jimmy G was holding that team back. Outside of quarterback, the 49ers have one of the best teams in the NFL easily. And he was literally holding them back. He couldn't make plays when they needed him most. And then even on top of all of that, he's injury prone. Even if you do get Jimmy G, if you're the Washington Commanders, which I really, really hope doesn't happen, that's one of my worst case scenarios, you still need to take a quarterback. You still probably should draft Malik Willis. And then on top of all of that, John Lynch said that teams need quarterbacks and are interested in Jimmy G, but he said, quote, Jimmy is a part of us right now, unquote. So that's basically them playing hard to get. They're trying to act like Jimmy G is potentially still their quarterback, at least for the near future, while Trey Lance is learning, and they're not just gonna give him up for pennies. So you're probably gonna have to overpay to get Jimmy G. You're gonna have to trade some crazy first round pick, maybe even a player, as if he's just this franchise quarterback, because the 49ers are gonna make it seem like they care about him so that they can get more trade value from a team that's trying to get him. So that's dead. I feel like Washington shouldn't have been trying to get him in the first place, but now the injury and the way that the 49ers are approaching this situation, he should definitely not be on the table. And then there was a report that Mitchell Trubisky is gaining traction as a plan B quarterback option for Washington. And of course, if you trade for Mitchell Trubisky, you also draft a rookie quarterback. I mean, maybe you get one in the first round. I would prefer to. If we end up getting Mitchell Trubisky, I would still prefer to go use our first round pick on a quarterback. But I think you at least have to draft a quarterback somewhere like first, second, third round at the very least. But Hogshaven also reported that Kenny Pickett is apparently quarterback one on their board as of right now because they like his maturity and experience. I don't know how much to believe that. Again, like I said, from that certain point in the video, take everything I say from here on out with a grain of salt, because a lot of these are sources and reports not directly coming from Rivera and Mayhew, but that's really interesting that right now Kenny Pickett is their quarterback one. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, and even if it is, who knows what may change by the time the draft actually gets here. Between the combine and once they start interviewing guys and these guys go out there and start throwing, and then those guys have their pro days. Guys like Malik Willis are not going to run until their pro day. They're not running at the combine. So we'll see. A lot of things can change. So that's really interesting right there. Again, don't know how much to believe it, but even if it is true, things can change. But I'm also seeing a report that looks a little bit more official that sources familiar with the Washington's front office say that Washington has nodded in the direction of Malik Willis, and there's also some intrigue with Desmond Ridder per Ben Standig. So it looks like Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, according to Ben Standig, are the quarterbacks that we're most interested in. Probably Malik Willis in the first round, maybe Desmond Ridder later in the first round, or maybe in the second. But Chad Ryan also reported to add to the list of reports that I'm not sure how much to believe, even including the one I just said about Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, that the Commanders front office is only interested in drafting a quarterback 11th overall if they neither trade for or sign one in free agency. So of course, like, we would not have a first first round pick if we go and get a Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, or one of those guys, like I've already said. But does that mean, like, even if we sign a Jameis Winston or a Marcus Mariota or a Trubisky, that we will not draft a quarterback? Especially like in the first round? Because there's no way Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky, and even as much as I like Jameis Winston, there's no way those guys stop you from drafting a quarterback. Even if you get Jimmy G for some dumb reason, there's no way that stops you from taking Malik Willis if you really like Malik Willis. But we'll see, man. If that's the case, then I personally hope we don't get anybody and we just go get Malik Willis and do what we got to do to get him. Again, unless we get one of the top guys. But it seems like they feel like if we end up with like a Jameis Winston, there's no point in drafting a Willis. So now, even as much of a fan of Jameis Winston I was, if these reports are true, I don't want Jameis Winston now. But Rivera did say a while ago that if they draft a quarterback, especially in the first round, they expect him to start day one. So I guess that adds up. But back to Mitchell Trubisky, it's been reported by Jordan Schultz that Mitchell Trubisky is drawing a lot of free agency buzz, and several teams, including the Commanders, Steelers, and Saints, are all interested in the former number 2 overall pick. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky is still only 27 years old. He has a bigger arm, so we'll see. It's probably one of them things. You get Mitchell Trubisky. If he works out, you hit big, you got him for cheap, because he does have great quarterback traits. He's just never been able to put it all together. And I'm not a big Mitchell Trubisky fan like that, but I mean, if you end up getting Mitchell Trubisky, like I said, I still want to get Malik Willis in the first round and learn behind him. But who knows? Mitchell Trubisky may end up being a good quarterback for some odd reason. And then now you potentially have a franchise quarterback battle between him and Malik Willis. Who knows? But I mean, at the worst case scenario, you get Mitchell Trubisky, you're not paying him much, you don't have to trade for him, he's a free agent, so you know, it's whatever. It's not exciting, but I can see it as realistic. That's my whole viewpoint. And again, I reiterate, if we end up with a guy like Jameis Winston or Mitchell Trubisky, I'm still taking quarterback in the first round. And it's crazy too, because Matt Miller, he's one of the guys that's the in crowd of the in crowd. I mean, he's personally talking to GMs, coaches, and everybody. Like, he's one of the main sources that you can trust when it comes to stuff like this. And he said that he's literally talked to more NFL teams this week about Mitchell Trubisky than any quarterback from the 2022 quarterback class. So that is really interesting. It seems like Mitchell Trubisky is a bigger buzzing quarterback than Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, or any of these other guys right now, as far as current talks at the combine right now. But who knows? Maybe when the quarterback combine day comes up, I believe that's tomorrow as in Thursday, and those guys start throwing, maybe somebody wows everybody and the conversation shifts to the draft quarterbacks. But as of right now, Matt Miller says that guys are talking more about Mitchell Trubisky than even the quarterbacks at this draft class, and this is at the combine where they're talking to all of these people. But the Mitchell Trubisky situation is interesting because the Bears are known to make quarterbacks worse than they should have. Like, it's just a place that quarterbacks go to die, literally. The offensive line was also bad while he was there. Didn't have a lot of weapons outside of Allen Robinson at all. And if you think about it, he technically does have a 29-21 record. He has 68 touchdowns to 38 interceptions, with a 65 completion percentage. He's gone to the playoffs twice. He's made a Pro Bowl. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but I'm still like, if you get Mitchell Trubisky, you're still taking quarterback in the first round. But on the negative side, and that was just me looking at it glass half full as far as Mitchell Trubisky, on the negative side, of course there's a lot of things wrong with Mitchell Trubisky. The biggest red flag with Mitchell Trubisky for me, though, is that we could have signed him last year, but we ended up getting Ryan Fitzpatrick. So what changed within just a year of Mitchell Trubisky not even playing, just sitting on the bench? Like, where did all of this interest come from? Is it literally purely because this quarterback class is perceived to be weak? That has to be it. That's the only thing I can think of. Because it's not like Mitchell Trubisky went to the Bills and did something amazing to generate more interest and buzz. He's literally done nothing this past year. He's just been in the refrigerator, and suddenly now teams are excited about him. It literally has to be because they perceive this draft class as weak. And if we're one of those teams that's really interested in them, that means that we perceive this draft class as weak as well, which I hope is not true, because I really want Malik Willis. And then also, as far as Mitchell Trubisky, I mean, there's an argument to be had. Is he even the best University of North Carolina quarterback available this offseason? Like, is he better than Sam Howell? So it's just like the fact that you even have to question that is just, the whole situation is weird. But as far as quarterbacks go, man, I think if we hit on the right quarterback, we're destined to take off. I think once we figure out middle linebacker and free safety, I think we are Super Bowl contenders again. in if you get this quarterback, if you get the quarterback position right. Even with like a Jameis Winston, our team has the potential to be very talented. When healthy, we have a top 5 offensive line. I like our running back group overall. I mean, they got the job done. Antonio Gibson needs to stop fumbling, and it would be nice to bring in a guy that can pick up 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, and goal line situations. But overall, I mean, especially if you bring back J.D. McKissic, we have a lot of weapons. Logan Thomas and John Bates, I feel like, are a really good tight end duo. And I think the defense is definitely going to bounce back, first of all, because our defense was elite when we had a very easy schedule. Then we had the league's hardest schedule out of the entire NFL, literally the most difficult schedule win percentage wise. And now we're potentially about to have the easiest schedule win percentage wise this upcoming season. So I expect our defense to bounce back as well. If for anything, even though we're going against less competition, it's going to be an easier schedule. So of course our stats are naturally going to look better, but I think that will also be a confidence booster. Like, we're those guys again. We play a few easy teams on the schedule, we make the playoffs, and they're hyped up like, yeah, we can do this. I don't care who the other team is. I think that does matter. I think momentum definitely matters when it comes to stuff like that. So I think honestly, you figure out middle linebacker and free safety and quarterback, we can definitely be Super Bowl contenders. And I think other quarterbacks have to notice that. I think quarterbacks are definitely smart enough to look at our team, look at what we did, especially on that 4-game win streak that Rivera even spoke about. Rivera even said that 4-game winning streak gave us a look at what the team can be. They were communicating and leaders were stepping up. And most importantly, we were healthy. I mean, Rivera doesn't want to speak about that because he doesn't want to create excuses. But when we were healthy and the defense finally figured it out, Jack Del Rio, during that bye week, finally sat down with the players and figured out what they were doing wrong. If we just had elite quarterback play, if we were healthy, that win streak would have definitely continued beyond 4 games. And like my original point is, I'm pretty sure quarterbacks have to be evaluating potential teams they can go to, and they have to look at our team, especially with Terry McLaurin on it, and be like, man, I could definitely go there and potentially win a Super Bowl. All right, so now we're done with the meat of the video. Next up, Montez Sweat's 5th-year option. It's been reported by Nikki Javala that the Washington Commanders plan to exercise Montez Sweat's 5th-year contract option. Even though Rivera neglected to speak about that in any detail during his press conference that we discussed earlier, it's been reported by a source close to the organization, Nikki Javala, she does not lie, that they do plan on exercising Montez Sweat's 5th-year option. So that will give us another year to figure out how we're going to re-sign him long term if we do end up doing it. Also, it's been reported that Green Bay, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. are the 3 finalists to host the 2024 NFL Draft. So that's really interesting, especially for those of y'all that are in the DMV area. I'm really happy for y'all. I really hope that happens so that y'all can just attend the draft. I would love to attend the draft. I may even fly out there to do it. Or who knows? I mean, by then, I should already be living in New York, so that's even closer than Atlanta. So if it ends up going to D.C., I'll probably be happy with y'all because I don't even have to necessarily fly to D.C. And then in very, very interesting news, probably one of the things I care the most about that I'm discussing in this video, it's been a report that there are 3 sites in Virginia that the Washington Commanders are considering for a stadium and entertainment complex, and emphasis on entertainment complex because it's not just going to be a stadium like how FedEx Field right now is literally just a stadium. They're definitely looking to go big or go home route as far as like how the LA Rams stadium, you have all of this stuff going around. Like, they're thinking resort, conference center, and amphitheater. They're thinking retail, they're thinking offices, they're thinking of a nightclub situation, family venue like Lego Discovery and things like that, cinema like a movie theater. Bro, they're thinking really big with the stadium, which has me really excited. But most importantly is that they also think that, first of all, they want the stadium to include 3 fields, an indoor field with offices and everything, training facility. They all want it to be one big thing. And they also want the stadium to have 700,000 square feet and a nearby hotel. And also, it's been reported that they're strongly considering some type of roof. So it's more than likely going to have some type of roof. Fixed or retractable is really the only debate. But it's not just going to be wide open like FedEx Field. So it's going to be like the Mercedes-Benz Stadium down here in Atlanta. I love going to that stadium, because if the weather's perfect, you just open the roof with that retractable roof and you can let nature in and football feels more natural. It's beautiful. But if the weather's terrible, if it's really cold, if it's really rainy, if it's really windy, if it's too hot, you just close the roof and now you have perfect temperature, perfect weather conditions. So I really hope it's retractable. Of course, it would cost more, but Dan Snyder got it. He good for it. If there is one positive thing about Dan Snyder, his money's long. If any of these owners in the NFL has the money to get a retractable retractable roof rather than a fixed roof, it is Dan Snyder. So I'm expecting a retractable roof since they're strongly considering a roof in the first place. But who knows? Maybe Dan Snyder may finally cut a corner here and just get a fixed roof. But either way, expect to have a roof in the next stadium. And again, don't expect anything stadium-wise until, I mean, we'll hear a lot of news coming up, but the FedEx Field lease doesn't end till 2027. So you're not going to be going to a home game for the Burgundy and Gold in a new stadium till 2027. Of course, they're going to start building it way before then, so we'll know a lot more before then. But again, you won't physically be in whatever new stadium, wherever it's going to be, however it's going to be built, whatever it's going to include until 2027. And then lastly, very random news. First of all, the Washington Commanders have been interviewing multiple candidates to be their head athletic trainer. Ryan Vermillion and assistant trainer Doug Quan remain on admin leave since October because of the DEA investigation, which is still crazy, the fact that hasn't been even like finalized or solved. It doesn't have a conclusion yet, but whatever. I'm glad that they're being proactive about signing a new one, because I mean, as soon as Ryan Vermillion got caught up, that's when injuries hit the fan. We even got hit by COVID really hard afterwards, and then all of these guys started suffering season-ending injuries. The offensive line, we were down to third and fifth stringers across the entire line. It got bad, bro. So definitely make sure y'all do a good job of finding the right candidate for head athletic trainer. I like the fact that they have identified 4 strong candidates, which means they looked at more than that and they've narrowed it down to 4, and they're going to pick from one of those 4. So hopefully they end up making the right decision. But right now I like where they're at in the process, because it shows that they're really trying to find the right guy. Also, in very random news, the team made 4 promotions. Offensive quality control coach Todd Storm has been moved up to assistant tight end coach. Offensive quality control coach Luke Del Rio, you see that last name Del Rio, has now become the assistant quarterbacks coach. Defensive quality controls coach Vincent Rivera, you hear that last name as well, has been added to assistant linebackers coach. And coach and intern Christian Garcia has been added to defensive quality control coach. So shouts out to Christian Garcia from taking an internship to becoming a defensive quality control coach. Now that person's on the payroll. That's really cool. That's a cool story. And then also, lastly, Rivera said that the off-season work should begin April 18th. So make sure Chase Young gets that message. I mean, granted, he's injured, so I'm not exactly sure if he'll be ready to participate. But remember last year, that man Chase Young was fully healthy and wasn't showing up to anything voluntary. So I hope all of the players heard that loud and clear. We begin off-season work April 18th. And nothing is voluntary to me for this organization until we start putting together some really good wins, winning the division, going to the playoffs consistently. Until then, we need to be taking the extra mile every chance we get. Every practice should be mandatory for these players. I mean, at the end of the day, if you got something to do, you had a vacation plan for some reason, you have some type of endorsement, whatever obligation you got to be at, whatever. But I would hope that every player makes it a priority to be there April 18th and beyond. Be there for every practice possible. Even if it's just meeting up to look at film, whatever. I hope everybody is all in. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. It's so much stuff, man. Please let me know. But yeah, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to everybody that donates to the channel. Shouts out to everybody that supports the channel. Even if that's just leaving a like, man, I appreciate all of it. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I really appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.